Wagwan, guys, I'm about to explain to you guys how I actually learned how to focus properly, how it impacted my work, how it actually made the work easier to do, and how it allowed me to actually scale to over 6 figures a month. So it's really all founded in one key concept for me and one core understanding of how your brain works, how the chemicals in your brain works, and how you can kind of manipulate them in order to actually be able to do the work easier and do a lot more work and be a lot more productive throughout your day, right? So the very first thing I want to explain to you guys is dopamine loading. And the best way I've seen it explained is that for the average person now, with social media, with everything that we do, your dopamine throughout the day looks like this, right? Big troughs, big dips, big highs, big lows, big highs, big lows throughout the entire day, right? Your dopamine is very, very up and down. And the concept that I learned, which is dopamine loading, is keeping your highs and lows pretty much on the same level throughout the entire day, and then maybe spiking it at the end of the day if you need to, right? Now, let me explain what this looks like in practice. For the average guy, you wake up, you go on your phone, you start scrolling, then you have a shower, then you eat breakfast. As you're watching breakfast, you're watching a super stimulating YouTube video, and there's pretty much before you've even started your day, there's already been like a massive amount of spikes in your dopamine system, right? So how we start to bend this and how we start to manipulate this to actually be able to do more work and do it easier is very simply just not doing anything that spikes your dopamine until you've done the work for the day. So what does this look like? So for me, instead of getting up in the morning and scrolling on social media and watching YouTube videos and eating, and some people be stroking their shit, all kinds of stuff, right? That drastically spike your dopamine levels before you even start your day. What I do is I wake up, I do not touch my phone, I have a shower, I don't have coffee, I don't have breakfast, I don't do anything at all that is stimulating. The most stimulating thing in my morning is a shower. I don't do anything that stimulates my body at all. The first thing I do is eat the frog, which is the second concept that we're going to get into. So the first concept is dopamine loading, but what ties into this is eating the frog. Now, what is that? It's doing the hardest task of your day first things first, right? The first thing you do is you just get it out the way. So what allowed me to actually regain my focus and be able to be super productive is, one, not spiking my dopamine at all until I've done the hardest task of the day. So what this looks like in practice is I will wake up and nothing will affect my dopamine except for work, right? So I wake up, I have a shower, still haven't touched my phone, haven't eaten any food, haven't done anything stimulating. Remember, eating food, doing anything will stimulate your dopamine. What you want to do is make sure nothing stimulates your dopamine except for the work, right? Then what you do by doing this is you start to rewire your brain to actually only get dopamine from completing tasks. So think about how your brain over time starts to now look at that as the reward rather than scrolling, right? So what I'll do, I'll wake up, I'll have a shower, and I'll go straight onto my laptop. For me, the biggest task of the day is scripting content, right? So I get straight to scripting videos. I have a certain amount of videos I want to script, which for me is 4 short form videos and 2 long form videos. And I will do that before I do anything else, right? So nothing has stimulated me, nothing has spiked my dopamine, nothing has even impacted my dopamine except for work, right? And that'll take me about 1 to 2 hours, and then I'll have that done before I actually start my day. Okay, so now this is all, keep in mind, this is all before like 7 to 8 a.m. Right, so before 8 a.m. I've done the hardest task of my day. I've not spiked my dopamine at all. I've not done anything, and I've already basically completed the biggest task of my work. So now you're getting dopamine from actually achieving something, right? The second thing in the day that I do after I do my work is I spike my dopamine. But I don't spike my dopamine by scrolling or by watching videos or by eating food. I spike my dopamine by going to the gym, right? So now it's about 8 a.m. and I'm actually on my way to gym. And this is the first time that my dopamine actually gets spiked slightly. And it's literally just going to gym and training, right? Because you're exercising, there's serotonin being released, there's chemicals being released in your brain and that, right? So that's the first thing that actually spikes my dopamine is exercise, right? So it's now 8, 9 a.m. in the morning, and I've not scrolled on social media, I've not eaten any food, I've just worked and trained, right? What you're doing by doing this is you're replacing cheap dopamine, You're replacing instant gratification with real rewards, real things that are actually going to move you closer to your goals, right? So remember, what I'm explaining to you is how to actually focus is to avoid distractions and avoid spikes in your dopamine, because how this works is when you spike your dopamine by scrolling, by watching porn, by doing any of the typical bad habits, right? When you spike your dopamine in that way, then when you try to sit down and you try to do the work, or you try to script the content, or you try to take the sales calls, your body knows that there's a way higher there's a way higher dopamine spike that you can access far easier, and it instantly wants to revert that. Who here has experienced that thing where if you scroll in the morning, then you want to sit down and you do your work, and as you're sitting down and doing your work, you're just like scrolling on social media, or as you're about to eat your food, you're also watching a YouTube video. That is because your brain knows how easy it is to get a big dopamine spike without any sort of real work. But when you remove that and you only allow yourself to get that dopamine from the work itself, then the focus becomes far easier. Then the work becomes far easier. And it becomes far more enjoyable as well, right? Because now you're not getting it from these instant gratifications, these bad habits, but you're actually getting it from good habits. You're actually getting it from something that's going to give you a real reward on the back end of that. Do you understand? Okay, so stop multitasking. Stop trying to do multiple things at once, and set aside a specific amount of hours for a specific task, right? So what this looks like for me, like I explained, I'll wake up, not do anything that stimulates me at all. Then I'll set a timer for 1 hour to script all my content. Then I'll set a timer for 2 hours to go train. Then when I get back from training, I'll set a timer for 1 hour to send out voice messages or set DMs or stuff like that. Then I'll set a timer for another 1 to 2 hours just to record content, right? And I don't do anything other than the task that I've set out for myself to do in that time frame, right? Because when you're multitasking, you're trying to do 100 different things at once, you're not excelling in the one thing that you're supposed to be doing, okay? So that's what it looks like. It looks like getting up early, not stimulating yourself at all, eating the frog, doing the hardest thing of the day. And remember, this only works if you literally do not stimulate yourself. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to wake up and do the hardest task of the day, but I'm going to scroll on social media for 5 minutes first, because now your dopamine's fucked, right? The core essence of how to actually focus is to only stimulate your dopamine with work. It's not to stimulate it with anything else. So you might be going like, isn't this just monk mode? Yes, but it's a different understanding of monk mode, where you can, if you get to 8 p.m. and you've done all your work and you've trained, then you can go on social media. I'm not telling that you have to stay off social media completely, but pretty much how I look at it is your day is fucked up once you do the mindless scrolling, because now you're going to revert back to that easy access of dopamine. So I try to not touch social media or content at all, or anything, or even food, until I've done the majority of my tasks, right? So I'll wake up, I'll script content, haven't touched it. Then I'll film the content, haven't touched it. Once I've filmed the content and I've trained and I've done everything that I need to do for the day, then it's okay. I can look at something stimulating, or I can eat something stimulating, because I've done the work now. But I know the work is going to be so much harder to do if I've been stimulated, and I know there's that easy access to dopamine. Another thing I do is I take supplements. So I take Sabre. They have like a all-around booster, and then they also have like a cognitive enhancer, right? And I can just give you guys like the link to that, but that's something that is something else you can add in that gives you hyper focus, right? It's got, I don't even know what the fuck it's got in it. I just trust the guys that make it, and it's gas. Not a product placement, by the way, not an ad. But then you can start to supplement certain things like a big dose of creatine. I take a big dose of royal jelly, and I take a big dose of taurine, and I take all those things. Plus, I take like 5 caps of Sabre, and now I'm just like wired as fuck as I'm doing these things, as I'm locking in, and it starts to just kind of unlock your brain a bit more, and make you more focused, more dialed in, and not as distracted, right? That on top of all the good habits I explained, it just supercharges it, and now you can just start to, you feel like you unlock, like, you can access 10% of your brain, you feel like you're accessing like 40, 50% of your brain when you do this, right? Then when you start to do this, right, and you start to stack it up over days, you start to get to a point where you get the results, and you're noticing how much more output you're having, and you're noticing how much more work you're doing, and then that improvement and that growth starts to snowball, right? Now you're more inspired because you're seeing the results and you're like, damn, I know how good it feels to be this focused and how to be this locked in. And it becomes a snowball effect now where you're more focused, you're more driven, and you do that day in, day out. And then it just becomes this big thing. And then you start getting results from it. Those results give you more inspiration. And then you just start to develop that desire for growth and that desire for development. And that's what you start to then get driven by. And it's not really about the numbers or the money in your bank account, but that's kind of just becomes a number on the scoreboard for the work that you're putting in, right? That's kind of how I started to look at focus. I think that's how wealthy people kind of look at it and how they operate is you make the most stimulating stuff in your day and the most enjoyable stuff in your day the work. And if you can make the work and the most stimulating stuff in your day the grind and actually self-development and actually putting that work in, boy, does it become easier to now be focused and to now enjoy that work rather than getting up and just spending the first 5 hours of your day on social media or doing dumb shit. So try it out. Let me know in the comments how you guys feel about it, if you guys found it beneficial, if it made a difference. But try it out. Come back to me in a week or two and let me know how it went. But it takes willpower. That's the thing about this is like it's hard to not touch your phone. It's hard to not scroll. It's hard to not eat, right? So it's going to take willpower. It's not going to be easy. It might not be the most fun, but I guarantee you if you do this, you'll start to notice yourself way more locked in, way more dialed, and having a lot more fun with the work that you're doing. And you'll just notice that you can literally get like a week's worth of work done in a day when you act like this. So lock in. I'll see you guys at the top. God bless.